Hi, and thanks for registering for stained glass training that will take place in Metropolis. My name is Lee Zamir, and I will be doing the trainings, and in order to make the best use of our time, I'm going to review a little bit of the work that you have to do prior to the start of training so that we can really get to work and try to finish your project in about 2 hours. So in our workshop, we're going to teach you the copper foil method of stained glass. And those basic steps are preparing your design, which I'm going to review today, and I want you to have done that before the start of your registered training time. Then there'll be the cutting of the glass, wrapping each piece of cut glass with copper foil, soldering those all together, and then putting on a patina so that it really looks like a finished project, one that's been done for a long time. But in order for us to fit this within 2 hours, we really need you to have a design ready to go, printed out in 3 copies, and I want to give you a little bit of parameters around what makes a great design. So first, your design should be 5" by 5" square, and that's not just a rough estimate. We've made some actual fixtures to help with soldering that are exactly 5 by 5". So in whatever software you're going to use for your design, if it's Adobe Illustrator, start with a 5" by 5" square, and then inside of that you can make your design. Other things that are important for your design are that there should be no more than 20 pieces. Now that really is an upper limit. If you really do 20 pieces, you may not finish in the 2 hours, but you'll have certainly gone through enough of the steps to know how to finish in some open hours afterwards. The less pieces, the easier it'll be to complete in the 2 hours. You can also do an organic or a geometric design. So what you see here is a nice geometric design. Geometric designs, ones with lots of straight lines, are easier to cut. They're quicker to cut. So you could probably get closer to that 20-piece limit and still finish on time. But organic shapes, ones that really follow curves, take a little bit more time, still doable, but you might want to get fewer pieces. So here's an example of an organic design where you're mixing some straight lines with some curves. You also want to avoid sharp concave curves. So for instance, here we have a concave curve. It kind of caves in. Another curve that we have is right here. This is probably on a 5 by 5" square. This circle is about 1" diameter. So that's about as extreme a concave curve as we would want. If you wanted a pedal that had a really sharp concave curve like that, we would actually want you to divide your design with another line so that each individual piece doesn't have a big concave curve, because it's very hard to cut this kind of glass into this sharp corner without it wanting to crack anyway. So again, if you're ever going to get to a very sharp concave curve, just divide it into 2 pieces. Another thing that will be made clear when I show you the rest of the process is make the line thickness about 4 points, which is about 1.4 millimeters. It could be 1.5, greater than 1 millimeter, but we want the lines to have a certain thickness to it, because when you cut these pieces out, we want to cut everything just a little smaller than a perfect fit, because we're going to wrap each piece with copper foil and solder. So we need a little bit of wiggle room for all of that stuff that we're going to add. So make your line weights about 4 points on this 5 by 5" square, and that should work out great. And then make sure there's no pieces that are smaller than 6 millimeters or 1/4 inch. The reason being, they just get kind of hard to handle, but also we're going to be wrapping them with foil and there's some overlap. And so every piece that you have will get a little bit smaller in terms of the viewability of light through the piece of glass. And so when they start getting smaller than that 1/4 inch or 6 millimeters roughly, the pieces almost don't let any light through after you wrap them with foil. And so in this example here, this is back to the geometric design, this smallest piece is about 1/4 inch in its shortest dimension. So that's what I want you to do. I want you to have one of your designs ready on a 5 by 5" square, and if you can and have access to a printer, please print out 3 copies. when you come to the training. I'll go over a quick what we'll be doing in class together so you know what to expect, but I will be reviewing this in real time when we're together in Metropolis so that you can understand how each step goes. So this is just a little preview. You don't need to remember all of this. We'll go over it again. The first thing you'll do is you'll take your copies. I'm showing you here 2 designs. We'll only be working on 1 design in our time together, but number your pieces. A lot of them can look the same. If you hand draw your design, some of these petals that you see here can be similar but a little different. And so you definitely want to make sure if 14 is a little different than 13, that you know which one's which. What we're going to do with your numbered design is we're going to cut them out. And remember I said use a 4-point line, as you can see here. We're going to cut inside each of those pieces. So all of those 4-point lines will end up being in your trash bin, and all of the pieces will have a little bit of breathing room as your templates that will transfer to the glass. Here you see how I'm just taking a black Sharpie. We also, if you're doing very dark glass, will have silver Sharpies so that you can see them on the dark glass. And you're going to use these paper templates that you cut out to trace the outside of. And then we're going to use a glass cutter to cut on the inside of these lines. So here you can see I'm using a little glass scoring tool, and I'll show you proper technique of how to do this both for straight lines and for curved lines. And in straight lines we use these things called running pliers, and they're just a plier that applies a little bit of pressure. They're crowned just a bit, and the peak of the crown is where you can see this little line on the pliers. So you put that over your score line, and with a little bit of pressure on the pliers, you can break off the glass. It's a very satisfying moment in the stained glass process. And once you have all your pieces cut and you'll have them numbered as you did in the templates, you'll know which way's right side up. You will go ahead and wrap this copper foil. Here you can see how the copper foil is a little wider than the thickness. So we're getting a little bit of overlap, which is what we want, but that's why you don't want a piece that's too small, because you're losing a little bit of your window to that wrap. Once you have the tape on all 4 sides, or the complete perimeter of your piece if it's curved, you'll use the Sharpie once again as a burnishing tool just to rub down the tape to make sure it's really smooth and has a strong adhesive contact to the piece of glass. And then we're going to lay them down into this 5x5-inch jig that I've prepared for you. In this case, you can see the geometric design. All of the pieces are numbered with their numbers facing in the same direction. You will then go ahead and could add, in this case, you can see how here we've added a little wire loop so that you could hang it, in this case, as a diamond from your window or wherever you're going to be hanging this. And now we're tacking with a soldering iron in all of the joints to keep everything together so that all the pieces don't start moving when we go to finish the soldering job, which you can see here. And we'll be doing the soldering on both sides and the edges, so covering everything that is copper with the solder. And then to give it a finished look, there's this patina chemical. You'll be wearing gloves for this step, and we'll be applying that, and it instantly turns what looks like brand new fresh solder in silver color to this really nice black that makes it look like it's been hanging in a church or in a window for a long time. And here is the finished piece. This is the organic example that I showed you, but we also have the finished piece of the geometric example. And we'll talk a lot in class about thinking about the grain and the texture, and when you're doing flowers that you want the grain kind of radiating out. And so you want to align your templates thinking about the grain. In here I made just a personal decision to make the grain of that circle go horizontally, but it could have just as easily gone a different direction. So with that, really the point of this video is to get you comfortable knowing what a good design is, that it should have less than 20 pieces, be in a 5x5-inch square, use a 4-point line width for the lines for all your pieces, and think about no really sharp concave curves, and no pieces smaller than 1/4 of an inch. I look forward to seeing you, and we'll have some fun making some stained glass.